Swords and kings, knights of yore, chivalry, worthiness, fighting a giant snail for some reason. The legend of King Arthur was born 1400 years ago, forging a legacy that lives with us today, influencing the entirety of modern pop culture and, of course, was adapted directly into a recent masterpiece.
1, 2, 3.
Edgar Wright's 2013 film The World's End is an Arthurian tale through and through.
What's King Arthur got to do with it?
Glad you asked. It features a king of England,
Gary King of the humans,
going on a quest, following an aged map with a band of loyal followers to free his fellow Britons from the yoke of tyranny. Any piece of pop culture featuring swords and shields wears its Arthurian references on its sleeve, but it's easy to forget just how far the influence of the legend goes. Genres go through trends. The Western waxed large in the 40s and 50s, only to wane precipitously, and while we're going through a surge of superheroism right now, we can all feel that bubble ready to burst. But there is one genre that has never faded from popularity. The genre of myth. The air of myth and legend can grow to encompass every story, from Batman to the Hunger Games to gangster movies, and even lending weighty import to smaller stories of humanity and domesticity. King Arthur is the central defining element of that genre, and you can feel its roots in the most populist modern blockbusters. Arthurian Legend informs a lot of Star Wars, a tale of knights and lords, the long-lost son of a king seizing the sword and duelling a black knight.
Alright, we call it a draw.
Controversial as The Last Jedi was, Luke Skywalker's end does mirror that of King Arthur. The aging king returning to face his nephew in battle at the cost of his life, returning to the magical island of Avalon to slip away peacefully, forging a legend in the process. Only his nephew is actually his secret incest bastard with his sister, which makes for a fan theory that no one really wants to think too hard about.
Just stop talking!
Star Wars passed down its influences to Marvel and DC, propagating the Arthurian legend to another generation. As exciting as the dream team of heroes was in the Avengers, that mould was set 1400 years ago by the Knights of the Round Table. A group of characters that could separate out into their own stories, like the Green Knight or the Fisher King, only to return for that epic team-up issue about the Holy Grail.
It's only a model. Shh.
Thor's hammer is an explicit piece of iconography ripped wholesale from Arthurian legend, a weapon that only the worthy can lift.
And below the hilt, in letters of gold, were written these words.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
So when it acts as a keystone crowd-pleaser moment in Avengers Endgame, the most titanic blockbuster in the year of our Lord 2019, you have to admit that Arthurian legend has lost none of its influence in the 1400 years since its inception. And not just in popular culture either. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is a 1998 video game in which the pulling of a sword from a stone acts as both a central narrative focus and a core gameplay mechanic. As 2017 rolled around, millions of players the world over were asked to reenact the Arthurian legend again in Breath of the Wild, which won Game of the Year. Fair to say video games are still considered pretty lowbrow, but even highbrow work is partial to a bit of Arthur. In 2015, Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Kazuo Ishiguro turned his talent on Arthurian legend with The Buried Giant. He actually considered using a more contemporary setting like Rwanda to explore the themes of culture and memory, but realised Arthurian myth is a perfect metaphor for the stories we tell ourselves and how corrupting they can be. And that's what legends are for, a commonly understood myth that can be used to tell new stories about our lived experience using familiar iconography. Pre-apocalypse, A24 released a trailer for The Green Knight. It looks to be a more moody art house kind of a movie, and already has more buzz and legitimacy than Guy Ritchie's failed franchise attempt back in 2017.
Must be a king. Why? He hasn't got shit all over him.
But these aren't just references to a well-worn myth, they are something a little bit more. Something made clear in one very specific adaptation.
The once and future king.
A collection of short stories published between 1938 and 1958, The Once and Future King charts the journey of King Arthur from his childhood to his final battle, shifting slowly from endearing whimsy to epic tragedy. It hit big at the time, the first story being adapted into 1963's The Sword in the Stone, and its portrayal of avuncular time traveller Merlin clearly influencing the character of Doctor Who, debuting the same year, a character who's still with us today. The Once and Future King helped solidify the legend of King Arthur in a definitive text and its archetypes. The scrappy kid who would be king defined the path of characters like Luke Skywalker and Jon Snow, while its wizardly mentor carved out the shape of every Gandalf, Obi-Wan,
Hello there.
and Professor X to follow. The legend of King Arthur looms so large, it's easy to forget its most unique trait. It is a story without singular source material. The origins of King Arthur are a bit of a mystery. Some suggest he was, in part, a real historical figure, a Celtic king who fought back the Saxon invasions between 400 and 500 CE. He's referenced in the Gododin, a medieval Welsh poem, describing warrior Gwadur as skilled at slaying his enemies, but was no Arthur. Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote an embellished account in 1138, The History of the Kings of Britain, adding in elements like Uther Pendragon, the wizard Merlin, and a magical sword. Over the years that followed, translations and adaptations, mostly French, added in elements like the Round Table, Sir Lancelot, Guinevere, and the Holy Grail, only for Sir Thomas Malory to condense them into the very first definitive work, Le Morte d'Arthur. Amidst its fantastical inventions are very real elements like the Saxon invasion, Castle Tintagel, the Isle of Avalon, which is in Glastonbury, so fair to say Arthur was a party animal, and a very real sword in a very real stone, which is still on display in Tuscany. Books like The Once and Future King are written by each successive generation in an attempt to put on paper a definitive version of the legend, because we don't have one. Just a weird mulch of history and fiction. But do we repeat the cycle of adaptation just because we love the story? Or is it something more instinctual? In his 2011 book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, author Yuval Noah Harari pops a particular myth about evolution. Whereas most people assumed that the evolution of language was integral to, say, telling your fellow caveman there's a lion down at the creek, he posits a different theory. That language, specifically the ability to tell stories, was the greatest evolutionary leap in our species' history. Humans have a limited capacity for personal relationships. We can manage a social group of about 250 people and that's it. But stories, invented and then shared, could bond literally millions of human beings together with a single goal. 250 people can't build a pyramid, sustain a national currency, or impose a system of justice, but if we're held together in our purpose by a story, be it a religion or a myth, we can achieve the unthinkable. Yuval suggests that stories are not entertainment, but an evolutionary need. That the joy of being told stories and telling them is a biological necessity for our survival. It's easy to assume the Arthurian legend survived this long because it's an archetypal story, but I don't think so. I think it's not a story we willingly propagate so much as one we've inherited. The legacy of the King Arthur myth is not a testament to its quality, but our own need to be told legends and to continually adapt them generation to generation. Legends are the story of our culture. traced far enough back in time to where it dissipates into the spoken word, predating written text. Like a family tree, we can trace back up the branch from Rick and Morty to Doctor Who to the once and future king, all the way back to a hushed tale in a mud hut. And like any ancestry, it evolves with each generation into forms new and brilliant and beautiful, but always familiar. This is the genealogy of stories, a legacy of inheritance we're all the recipients of. Not every story is the same, but they are all, at least, related. So, the next time someone strikes up a lightsaber, or wields a mighty hammer, or whenever the Green Knight is finally released, it's important to remember the legends that got us here, and why that need to tell and be told them runs so deep. Legends are, after all, literally, in our blood.
Suddenly the rain has disappeared. Clouds have risen up, the sky has cleared. It's as real as the sun that bathes my brow. So who is building castles now? Hedgerows scatter far across the mead. Birds dive low at furrows full with seed, and the earth lies ready, crooked from the plough. So who is building castles now? O reaper, with your eyes, can you find my soul and fill me with your charms, so they'll stay? And if the rain should come, then let it shine.
I command you, as King of the Britons, to stand aside.
Then you shall die.
So be it. At you.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
I've heard worse.
You liar.
Come on, you pansy. Right, I'll do you for that.
You what?
Come here.
What are you going to do, bleed on me?
Oh, I see. Running away, eh? You yellow bastard! Come back here and take what's coming to you! I'll bite your legs off!